Today, we're going to push my computer to the absolute limits so we can troubleshoot some common digital audio workstation issues. I don't understand why my computer keeps crashing. Hello everyone, and welcome to WaveSpot. My name is Austin Knaus, and I've spent the last 2 decades working with audio. My goal with this channel is to share all the fundamentals I've learned along the way in order to give you a fast track to understanding the world of sound. So, let's dive in. So even though in this series we haven't gotten too far into a digital audio workstation yet, I still want to cover some common troubleshooting issues so you're not taken by surprise when you jump into the DAW and it's not working 100% the way you think it would. So I want to give you 5 troubleshooting tips to get you up and going in case that you just recently bought an audio interface and you're eager to get started. So one of the first things that I want to talk about is just no sound at all. So first steps first, is it even plugged in? You would be surprised that the reason why your audio interface isn't working is because you haven't even plugged it in yet. Or it's just not seated correctly in the USB port. So step number 1 is make sure your interface is actually plugged in. Quick tip and step number 2 is, did you read the directions for your audio interface? A lot of audio interfaces come with specific drivers to help your audio interface communicate with your computer, as well as other softwares. For example, I'm using an Apollo Twin by Universal Audio. That interface actually has a completely separate software from the DAW in order for me to configure it, and we'll see some of that later. Before you get going too fast, make sure to read the directions because there's different softwares and drivers that actually come for free with an audio interface. You actually might be losing out if you don't read the directions first. Step number 3, making sure that your audio interface is selected as your primary sound card. So you've made sure that your audio interface is physically plugged in correctly. You follow the directions and you've downloaded the drivers and the necessary softwares in order for your interface to communicate with your computer, but you still don't have any sound. Here's why. Jumping into the computer really quick. First, the easy way, you can go down to your sound settings and make sure that your interface is selected as your playback device. Or you can right click on your sound settings, move myself down here, and now we can see the output device. We have Universal Audio Thunderbolt, which is my interface, and then we can go to the input device, which is going to be our microphone, and make sure that that is also selected as the audio interface. If you don't select it as your primary sound card for input and output, you're not going to get input and output through your audio interface. Number 4, your computer plays audio, but your DAW doesn't. This is a key indicator that you have not selected your audio interface as your primary sound card inside the DAW. So, if you've selected your audio interface as your primary sound card for the computer, it's a good time to jump into your DAW and do the same for the DAW. As you can see here, we're in my audio preferences, and if I go to audio devices, there's a bunch of different audio interfaces. We have Ableton Push, we have Audio for All, FL Studio as an interface for Ableton. Yes, you can do that. Machine, Realtek Audio, so this is just my internal sound card for my computer. Again, I'm using the Apollo Twin as my interface, so I'm going to make sure that that one is selected. Step 5 will make it feel silly, but if you've gone through steps 1 through 4, and you've made it all the way to 5 and you still don't have any audio, make sure your computer's unmuted. That's right. Make sure that your audio is turned up, that your computer's not muted, and that your DAW is turned up and your DAW is not muted. I can't tell you how many times that I've gone through steps 1 through 4 and realized, oh, I had my system muted. It happens. Now, this was not an exhaustive list, but they are helpful tips to get you started. Normally, you can get through steps 1 through 5 and get audio working. If it still doesn't, there's probably something a little bit deeper going on that I just can't pinpoint in this video for you. The next thing that we're going to talk about is the dreaded pops, clicks, and glitches. All right, this is where we're going to start pushing my computer pretty hard. So if you remember from lesson 4, understanding your audio interface settings, I'll tag it up there. We talked about buffer size and how Buffer size is the amount of samples that you allow your computer to process before playing it back out of your speakers. Well, if your buffer size is too small, your computer can't process things fast enough, so it starts to pop and glitch. A way that we can combat this is to increase the buffer size, but this causes more latency. So it's a fine balance between your computer having the ability to actually process the information that you're giving it versus you actually being able to use your computer in an efficient manner. So we can see up here that my CPU is currently running at around 18% with nothing really going on. I am recording this video on the same computer, so that's probably why my processing is a little high. So if you're in the middle of a session and you're recording something or you're mixing and mastering, whatever, and your computer starts to sound like this means that you can hear the pops and clicks. This means my sample rate is too small. To exaggerate this, let me change some settings. So while I'm talking, this is becoming, that's unusable, right? So if I'm in the middle of a recording and it's crashing really hard, what I can do is I can go into my audio settings and configure my buffer size to be larger. So now my voice is going to sound a little bit cleaner. I can still trigger it. I can still trigger the sound, but it doesn't happen unless I'm triggering it. So you can see now that I have a larger buffer size, it's cleaner audio because I gave my computer more time to process the sound. Check 1, 2. But if you noticed, now my voice is delayed, and this is where we're going to get into latency. So this software is the software that comes with my Apollo interface, and right now this is actually the software that we're listening to. So if I mute this, I go away. So I'm going to leave this on. And while I do that, I'm going to unmute myself inside Ableton. And now there's two of my voices. You can hear that they're doubled up. And what happens if I actually increase my buffer size? So let's double it and go from 128 to 256 really quick. Okay, so I increased the amount of latency. So now our output latency is 5.85 milliseconds. What happens if I increase this to 512? Now our latency is essentially double. You can start to actually hear the doubling of my voice. And this is where it starts to become audible, an audible delay. Let's increase the buffer size one more time. Now we're at 1024. And now it's becoming hard for me to actually talk because I could hear myself delayed. It makes your brain think about what you're hearing while you're talking, which is pretty hard. We're at 21.9 milliseconds of latency. Let's increase that, double that, to 2048. Now we're at 4. I have to take my headphones off because it's so hard for me to understand. But we're at 43.2 milliseconds of latency. This is pretty much unusable. So now you can see the relationship between buffer size and latency. The larger the buffer size is, the more latency there is because your computer has more time to process the samples. So for an extreme example, if I'm playing my audio and I'm getting pretty bad pops, clicks, and glitches, what I can do is I can increase my buffer size, which makes recording really hard, but it gives our computer less pops and glitches and makes our process a little smoother. Increasing buffer size allows our computer to process information, making the processing a little bit cleaner. So there you have it. When we increase our buffer size, it reduces the pops, clicks, and glitches by allowing our computer more time to think about things. But it does increase the amount of latency, which makes it really hard to record because there's now two audible sounds. You hear yourself coming out of, your head, and then you hear your voice replayed in your headphones, and it doubles up. It makes it really hard to focus. It's a trade-off If your computer has the pops, clicks, and glitches, increase your buffer size, but it's going to prevent you from recording. So there's a really good demonstration on how buffer size and latency and your computer's processing power, aka the pops, clicks, and glitches, are in a fine balance with each other. Now, if you have a really nice computer and a lot of processing power, it's going to be a while until you come across those pops, clicks, and glitches. But if you don't have a really strong computer, those pops, clicks, and glitches can come in fairly soon. Sometimes we outgrow our computers. Like I said in one of the previous videos, it's more likely you outgrow your computer than you outgrow your audio interface. Now you know why. So, to sum it all up, make sure your audio interface is actually plugged in correctly. 2, make sure you follow all the directions that come with your audio interface and to download all of the drivers and necessary softwares for your interface to actually communicate with your computer. Step 3 is making sure that your audio interface is selected as your primary sound card for both playback and recording on your computer. Step 4 is to do the same exact thing inside the DAW. Remember, the computer and the DAW are 2 separate things, and you need to set the settings up for both of them. Number 5 is making sure that your DAW and your computer aren't muted because, it happens. Getting pops, clicks, and glitches is inevitable. If you're getting the pops, clicks, and glitches, you can increase the buffer size to give your computer more time to process the information, but it increases the amount of latency. So it's a trade-off. If you're recording, you want low latency so you don't get the doubling of voices in your head and make it really hard and confusing to listen to. Though, if your computer can't handle that smaller buffer size and the short amount of latency, you're going to have to trade off and increase the buffer size and hope that you can record with a little bit of latency. Now, if you just opened up your DAW and your buffer size is already set to 2048 and you're getting the pops, clicks, and glitches, unfortunately, this is going to be an indicator that you're going to need a new computer. If you found any of this information valuable, hit that subscribe button. I release a new video every Monday. If you learned something new, or if you still have questions, leave a comment below and I'll be sure to get back to you. If you want to read more on the topic, feel free to head over to wavespot.com, where I have all of today's illustrations and more detailed information written in a blog post. And until next time, thanks for watching. I don't understand why my computer keeps crashing.